Captain Maggie Rios never trusted the phrase, peaceful exploration mission. It sounded like the kind of thing bureaucrats in clean suits said to keep funding committees happy, not the people who actually had to strap themselves into a steel can and fling it into the black. She sat in the captain's chair of the USS Road Rage, sipping burnt coffee that tasted faintly of recycled sock, watching the asteroid belt roll past on the main viewport like some slow-motion demolition derby. Her crew, what was left of them after the last budget cut, were a mix of stubborn survivors, overqualified misfits, and one AI with the personality of an unhelpful office assistant from the late 1990s. The tactical officer, Sergeant Darius Cole, stood at his station, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the data feeds with the kind of grim patience you only learned after a dozen real combat deployments. The ship's engineer, Big Al Mendoza, lounged against a console chewing a stick of gum like it owed him money. Dr. Sienna Collard, the ship's xenobiologist, sat cross-legged at the science station, staring at a holoscreen with the detached fascination of someone who would absolutely stop to pet a tiger just to see what happens. And then there was Clippy 9000, an old artificial intelligence the Navy had salvaged from an antique tech museum and upgraded for space ops. Captain, Clippy's cheerful, paperclip-shaped avatar popped up on the display. It looks like you're trying to avoid being eaten. Would you like some help with that? Maggie set the coffee down with deliberate care. Clippy, if I could uninstall you, I'd do it with a sledgehammer. I'm logging that as a hostile workplace comment, the AI chirped. Captain, Darius interrupted, we've got movement at bearing 179. Multiple contacts. Formation flying. The viewport shifted as the ship's sensors tracked the incoming objects. At first they were just shadows weaving between asteroids, gliding with a grace no human ship could match. Then the shapes resolved into something more deliberate, sleek vessels with curving hulls, no visible weaponry, but an unmistakable predatory elegance. They're flanking, Darius muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Sienna leaned forward, eyes bright. Look at that spacing, they're moving like a coordinated hunting pack. This is fascinating. Big Al snorted. Yeah, real fascinating until they decide we're lunch. The alien ships didn't respond to the standard automated hails. Maggie switched to manual, keying in the UN standard greeting protocol, slow, polite, full of cultural disclaimers meant to avoid misunderstandings. The transmission went out, bouncing between the asteroids, a tidy little invitation to talk. What came back wasn't words. It was a sound. At first it was a low, thrumming click, rising in pitch, layered with something that could have been sonar or could have been a growl. The noise vibrated through the hull, worming its way into the crew's bones. Maggie's skin prickled. That, Sienna said with a faint smile, wasn't a greeting. Pretty sure it was, Big Al said, if the message was run. Clippy helpfully added, statistical analysis of the acoustic pattern suggests is 78% similar to the hunting call of Panther Leo, commonly known as the African lion. Also, 12% similar to your last karaoke night, Captain. Maggie ignored him. She kept her eyes on the alien formation, watching the way they adjusted to the Road Rage's subtle maneuvers. The movement was deliberate, calculating. One ship surged ahead, another fell back. The others fanned out wide, staying just inside weapons range without locking on. It wasn't random. It was a pattern she knew. Sienna confirmed it a moment later. They're behaving exactly like Orcus when they're corralling seals. Drive the prey in, isolate, strike. She tilted her head. Only difference is they're doing it in 3 dimensions. Maggie felt the old muscle memory stirring, the same instincts that had kept her alive in war zones from Mars to Titan. They fight like us, she said quietly. No, they hunt like us. The alien ships tightened their circle. Maggie ordered the Road Rage into a slow drift, minimizing thruster output, letting the asteroid's gravity wells mask their heat signature. But the Scroth, if that's what they were, didn't break off. They matched every shift, every subtle angle change, shadows in the void that refused to be shaken. Darius's hands danced over the tactical console. They're probing our defenses. Little pushes here and there, seeing where we'll flinch. Big Al muttered, feels like standing in the dark and hearing a bear breathing. Maggie almost smiled. Bears don't circle. Wolves do. The radio crackled with another burst of alien sound, sharper this time, almost a bark. The Road Rage shuddered as a directed energy pulse hit their shields, just a taste, not enough to breach. The crew went still. That wasn't an attack, Sienna said, her voice low. That was them saying, we found you. Maggie's mind was already racing. In any hunt, the moment you were found was the moment the clock started ticking. She weighed the options, try to outrun them in an asteroid field and risk collision, power up weapons and risk full engagement, or keep hiding and wait for them to get bored. None of those fit the situation. The Scroth, she was starting to realize, weren't going to get bored. Darius, she said, if they come in, where do they hit first? They'll disable engines, he said without hesitation. Cut off escape. Then pick us apart. Like sharks taking out a seal's flippers, Sienna added, sounding far too intrigued for Maggie's comfort. Another pulse hit, this one closer to the engines. Maggie swore under her breath. The Scroth were testing them, like a cat batting a mouse. Clippy, she said, kill external lights. Reroute power from the comms to the point defense grid. Darius, plot a drift path deeper into the belt. Al, get ready to dump any non-essential mass. Big Al grinned. Guess that means Clippy's safe. The ship dimmed to darkness. Outside, the asteroids loomed, massive and indifferent, their jagged surfaces catching what little light there was. The road rage slipped between them like a ghost, trying to become just another lump of rock. But the Scroth didn't peel away. They followed, adjusting, their hulls glinting like wet obsidian whenever they passed through thin beams of starlight. The circle tightened again. Maggie could feel the crew's tension, a wire pulled too taut. Then one of the alien ships darted forward with sudden, startling speed. In a blink, it cut across their bow, flooding the viewport with its sleek silhouette. The ship's design was disturbingly organic, its contours more like a predator's body than a machine. The alien vessel rolled, showing its underbelly, and a flare of blue light pulsed from beneath it. The road rage lurched as every light and console on the bridge went dead. The hum of the engines faded. In the dark, there was only the sound of the crew's breathing and the faint creak of the hull under shifting pressure. Somewhere out there, in the cold, the hunters were still circling. Maggie leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. All right, she murmured into the darkness. You want to play predator? Let's see how you handle prey that bites back. And for a long, silent moment, the ship drifted, waiting for the next move in the hunt. The dark didn't bother Maggie. She'd been in worse. Trenches under Martian dust storms, the inside of a ruptured drop pod with half the hull peeled away. Darkness was only a problem if you didn't know what was inside it. Right now, she knew exactly what was out there, hunters. They just weren't human. The emergency backup systems flickered faint amber, giving the bridge a dim, almost candlelit glow. It cast long shadows across the crew's faces, sharpening the angles of their features. Darius stayed at the tactical console even though most of its systems were dead, his fingers hovering over manual control keys. Big Al was already halfway into a maintenance crawlspace, pulling out panels and muttering to himself about jury-rigging life out of scrap. Sienna, on the other hand, was unflinchingly still, eyes locked on her portable scanner like she was studying a predator through binoculars. They're still moving around us, she murmured. 6 ships, tightening the circle, but they haven't closed in for the kill. They're waiting for something. Waiting for what? Maggie asked. Us to panic, Sienna said. A wounded prey animal runs, burns energy, makes mistakes. That's when the predator strikes. Clippy's voice cut in, cheerfully oblivious to the tension. If you'd like, I can simulate panic by playing a selection of stressful 20th century soundtracks. I recommend Psycho, Jaws, or any scene from Full Metal Jacket. Mute him, Maggie told Darius, who did so without a word. She leaned forward, elbows on knees. We need to flip this. We can't think like prey. Darius, if they fight like us, then they have blind spots like us. Where are they? He frowned, eyes narrowing. Their formation's too tight for standard pursuit. If I were running this, I'd assume their trailing ships have limited forward visibility, shadowed by the lead's drive flare. In a pack hunt, those rearmost hunters rely on cues from the front. Meaning, Maggie said, if we disappear from the front ship's sensors. The back ones will overcorrect, Darius finished. Big Al popped up from the crawlspace, wiping sweat and grease from his forehead. I can get you a partial systems jump. Enough for a short, hard burst. After that, we're back to coasting until I patch the power relays. Sienna's lips curved in a faint, almost dangerous smile. A feigned limp. In predator psychology, nothing draws a strike faster. Maggie's gaze sharpened. We give them an opening, make them commit, and hit back harder. The plan formed fast. They'd drift slow, letting the Scroth see them struggling. At the right moment, they'd dump thermal decoys and cut across an asteroid cluster where the tight formation would work against the aliens. It was risky. If they miscalculated, they'd be boxed in completely. "Make it happen," Maggie said. Big Al worked with a feverish focus, his hands moving with the confidence of a man who had once repaired a fusion core with nothing but a wrench and a bottle opener. Darius input the drift path into the backup NAV system, eyes flicking between asteroid spin rates and estimated alien reaction times. Sienna adjusted her scanner, fine-tuning it to read faint radiation leaks from the Skroth ships. The Road Rage began its slow, vulnerable glide. The Skroth followed, mirroring the shift. They moved with the effortless grace of apex predators. No wasted motion, no hesitation. One ship angled closer, testing, then fell back again. Maggie felt the seconds stretch, her heartbeat sinking with the subtle vibration of the drifting hull. 3, 2, 1, Bagel said under his breath. Maggie barked, "Now." Thermal decoys fired from the starboard ports, small, pulsing signatures mimicking damaged escape pods. At the same moment, Big Al pushed the engines to a sudden surge, the Road Rage swinging toward the densest part of the asteroid cluster. The lead Skroth ship adjusted instantly, tracking them, but the rear two hesitated, unsure of which target to follow. That single beat of hesitation was all Darius needed. "Firing," he said. The manual coil guns roared to life, sending jagged slugs through the black. One Skroth ship veered hard, dodging, right into the path of an oncoming asteroid shard. The impact shattered part of its hull, spinning it into the shadows. The other clipped debris, its formation collapsing as it tried to stabilize. 2 down, Darius confirmed. The remaining 4 Skroth tightened formation again, this time more cautious. Sienna glanced at her readings. They've changed behavior. No more probing, they're repositioning for a direct strike. Maggie knew that meant they were learning. That was the problem with predators. You could trick them once, but if they were smart enough, the next move had to be even more unpredictable. Big Al's voice came from beneath another console. "Engines are going to need 10 minutes before I can give you another full burn." "We won't have 10 minutes, Darius said flatly. Sienna shifted uncomfortably. "I know you don't want to hear this, but if they're hunting like us, they'll want to test dominance now. They've seen we can hurt them, and they'll want to reestablish control." Maggie leaned back, eyes on the viewport where the alien ships moved like black knives in the dark. "Good," she said. "Let them try." A moment later, the Skroth made their move. 2 ships dove from above, while the others swept in low, forcing the Road Rage into the asteroid shadows. Energy pulses lit the black like silent lightning. The hull shuddered as the shield generators absorbed the brunt of the impacts, but warning lights flared red across the bridge. Darius returned fire with precision bursts, not trying to score kills, but to herd the attackers into tighter angles. Sienna fed him trajectory data in clipped, urgent tones. Big Al cursed from somewhere inside the guts of the ship as another pulse shook the frame. Then one of the Skroth ships made a mistake. It overcommitted on a pass, drifting just close enough for Darius to fire a concentrated salvo into its drive section. The alien vessel flared bright, then went dark, drifting dead in space. The 3 remaining ships pulled back sharply. For a moment, the black was still again. Maggie's pulse was steady now. She knew this part, the pause in the hunt when both predator and prey reassessed. Sienna broke the silence. "They're signaling. Not to us, to something else." Darius's head snapped toward her. "Reinforcements." The scanner chimed. "They've just sent a transmission on a wideband encrypted channel," she confirmed. Maggie's mind clicked through possibilities, and none of them were good. If these were just the hunters, what answered that call would be bigger, smarter, hungrier. The faint hum of the ship's systems filled the quiet. Big Al's had emerged from a maintenance hatch, grease smeared across his cheek. "Engines will be ready in 8 minutes. If we're lucky, we can." "We're not running," Maggie cut him off. Her gaze stayed locked on the distant, shifting shapes of the Skroth. "We're going to watch. Learn. Every move they make." Darius looked at her, half questioning, half understanding. "Because if they fight like us, then we'll know exactly how to kill them," Maggie finished. Outside, the Skroth ships drifted back into formation, their dark hulls gleaming faintly in the starlight. Somewhere out there, whatever they called to was already on its way. Maggie didn't smile, but there was a sharpness in her eyes now, a predator's focus. The hunt wasn't over. It was just changing shape. Maggie didn't bother calling for a full battle briefing. the crew was already gathered on the bridge. The quiet between them wasn't fear, it was calculation. Everyone here had survived enough to know the difference between hopeless and dangerous. This was the latter, and that meant there was still a way to win. Darius kept his arms folded, watching the tactical overlay flicker on the half-repaired display. For Skroth ships, still circling, and one derelict drifting among the asteroids. Beyond them, nothing yet, no sign of what they had summoned. That absence was its own warning. We've got a narrow window before their backup arrives. We either break their nerve now, or we won't get another chance. Big Al leaned against the engineering console, chewing gum like it was the only thing keeping him calm. Engines are 90%. If I push them, we can make them dance, but not for long. Overheat the coils, and we're dead in the water. Sienna was scrolling through her scans, her voice a measured counterpoint to the tension. They're not just hunting anymore. They're posturing, circling slower, broadcasting low-frequency pulses. It's intimidation, predator to predator. They want us to acknowledge their dominance. Maggie rubbed her jaw, a slow grin forming. Then we make them think we're crazier than they are. All three crew members looked at her. She straightened, walking to the center of the bridge. Here's the thing about human predators. We don't always hunt for food or territory. Sometimes we hunt for the story, for the spectacle. And nothing unsettles a disciplined hunter more than prey that refuses to act like prey. Darius arched an eyebrow. You're proposing theater? Full Broadway production, Maggie said. We'll hit them with everything they don't understand. The unpredictability, the noise, the chaos they can't model. She pointed at Big Al. Rig me every decoy you've got, flare pods, chaff bursts, whatever's left. And paint them, bright colors, teeth, whatever makes them stand out. Big Al's grin widened. Got a couple of inflatable survey drones in storage. I can rig them to look like angry sharks. Sienna looked both amused and horrified. We're weaponizing psychological absurdity. Exactly, Maggie said. Darius, I want overlapping attack patterns. Don't try to destroy them, just keep forcing them into bad angles. Every time they think they've got a line on us, we'll be somewhere else, laughing. Within 20 minutes, the Road Rage was a different ship. Inflatable shark decoys floated off the hull, rotating lazily in zero gravity, their painted maws grinning wide. Flares and chaff pods were loaded into improvised launchers, and the external speakers were patched to the comm array. Maggie gave the signal, and Big Al hit play. The opening riff of Thunderstruck by AC/DC tore through the void, carried on wideband radio. The effect was instantaneous. The Skroth formation faltered, not breaking, but shifting in what looked like genuine confusion. Targets moving to intercept, Darius reported. Let them come, Maggie said. The first Skroth ship dove in, sleek and precise. The Road Rage swung just enough to draw it into the path of a flare pod, the sudden bloom of heat throwing its targeting systems off for a crucial 2 seconds. Darius used the opening to land a glancing hit across its port side, nothing fatal, but enough to send it spiraling into the cover of an asteroid. A second ship tried to flank from below, only to run straight into the drifting silhouette of one of Big Al's inflatable sharks. The decoy's painted teeth filled its sensors before a timed chaff burst blinded it. The crew laughed, genuine, sharp-edged relief. Sienna's voice cut through the noise. Their attack pattern is unraveling. They're hesitating, second-guessing each other. That's the point, Maggie said. Hunters don't like losing control. The third ship came in faster, almost reckless, trying to reassert dominance. Maggie ordered a sudden reversal burn, the Road Rage flipping end over end before surging forward again. The maneuver threw the Skroth's aim wide, its energy pulse streaking harmlessly into the dark. Big Al punched the comm system to full power, and the bridge filled with the sound of Bill and Ted's Wild Stallin's guitar solos. It was absurd. It was loud. It was so utterly human that Maggie saw one of the Skroth ships break formation entirely, peeling off into the asteroid field. They're not retreating, Darius said, watching the tactical feed. They're regrouping. This isn't over. Maggie didn't take her eyes off the viewport. Good. I'm not done either. The last 2 Skroth ships dove in together, a pincer attack from opposite vectors. Maggie waited until they were almost on top of them, then gave the order. Big Al triggered the last of the decoys, a massive cargo crate they'd filled with high-density glitter and shaped charges. It detonated in a blinding, sparkling cloud that slammed into both ships, rattling their shields and coating their hulls in reflective debris. On the sensors, the 2 ships looked like they were on fire with rainbow light. On the bridge, the crew's laughter was almost feral. Sienna shook her head. You realize we've just convinced them we're insane. That's the plan, Maggie said. The glitter cloud drifted apart slowly, revealing the two Scroth vessels retreating to a safer distance. The derelict still floated nearby, silent witness to the chaos. For the first time since the encounter began, the Scroth weren't advancing. Darius studied the tactical readout. They're holding position. No approach, no pursuit. Waiting again. Sienna's scanner pinged. She didn't look up. Not just waiting. They're scanning the field, broadcasting the results. Which means, Maggie said, whoever they called is about to get an earful about us. The comm system chimed, an unfamiliar signal punching through their jammers. Clippy's voice came back online without anyone authorizing it. Incoming transmission. It appears to be from a much larger vessel. Translation algorithm suggests the opening phrase is, "We have arrived." Maggie let the words hang in the air. The tension didn't return exactly, but it shifted, sharpening into something else. The crew understood. Everything so far had just been the opening act. She straightened in her chair. All right, she said quietly. Let's welcome the head of the pack. The mothership slid into view like a continent breaking the horizon, vast and deliberate, its hull a labyrinth of overlapping plates that caught faint starlight and sent it scattering in shards. It didn't just dwarf the road rage, it made their ship feel like an insect in the shadow of a skyscraper. Even at a distance, the thing radiated intent. Maggie felt it through the viewport as much as she saw it, the same way you could feel a predator's gaze before it made a sound. No one spoke for several seconds. The bridge was silent, except for the steady hum of systems and the occasional soft ping of Sienna scanners. Darius was the first to break it. Weapons arrays are hot. That thing's armed in every direction. Big Al exhaled through his nose, chewing slower now. If we fight head-on, we're scrap. They could swat us without noticing. Sienna glanced at Maggie. Then we can't fight head-on. Maggie's voice was calm, but her eyes were alive with that dangerous spark a crew had learned to read as both a warning and a promise. They want to hunt. We'll take them into terrain where the hunt costs them more than they can afford. She pointed to a tight cluster of asteroids on the far side of the belt. That's a compression zone. Dense enough to hide us if we keep moving. And if we can destabilize the gravity wells in that area. Darius's brow lifted. We could collapse part of it right on top of them. Big Al gave a low whistle. That's not a plan, that's a suicide note with extra steps. It's also the only play we've got, Maggie said. She didn't need to raise her voice. The weight behind her words was enough. We draw them in. Once they're committed, we cut their legs out from under them. It took 7 minutes to prepare. Big Al routed power from non-essential systems into the drives and jury-rigged a remote ignition system for the demolition charges they'd salvaged from the derelict mining station 2 months ago. Darius plotted a path through the cluster that looked chaotic enough to seem desperate, while actually leading the mothership exactly where they wanted it. Sienna tuned the sensors to watch for micro-shifts in the asteroid spin, warning signs that the gravitational cascade was close to tipping point. The mothership followed, its escorts tightening the net. The smaller Scroth ships had learned caution, but they didn't break off. Maggie suspected they'd been ordered to herd rather than kill. The Scroth leader wanted to finish this in person. As the road rage darted between two massive chunks of rock, the mothership loomed closer, adjusting with an unnerving grace for its size. Each movement was silent, but the way it filled space was suffocating. Maggie's pulse didn't quicken. Instead, she felt the calm that came just before pulling a trigger. Charges are in position, Big Al reported. Once we light M, there's no unlighting M. Understood, Maggie said. Hold until I say. They cut deeper into the cluster, the asteroids crowding tighter until the mothership's flanks scraped gravitational wakes off their surfaces. On the bridge, the crew could feel the vibrations as faint tremors through the hull. The Scroth were committed now, too close to maneuver freely. Maggie keyed the comms to an open channel. To whoever's in charge out there, you've had your fun. But here's the thing about humans, you start a hunt with us, you'd better be ready to find out we hunt back. Static answered at first. Then a voice, deep and resonant, carrying a guttural cadence that the translator rendered with eerie clarity. You are dangerous, but you are prey all the same. Maggie's lips curved. We'll see. She cut the channel. Light it. Big Al's hand slammed down on the ignition switch. A chain of detonations rippled through the cluster, the first wave tearing free massive shards of rock, the second shoving them into motion with violent force. The gravitational cascade began instantly, asteroids pulling at each other, colliding, spinning out of control. The mothership tried to reverse, but the passage behind was already sealing as rocks slammed together. Its escort scattered, one crushed outright, another clipping an asteroid and tumbling into darkness. "Forward vectors collapsing," Sienna said quickly. "If we don't get out now, we're part of the debris." Maggie didn't answer. She was watching the mothership, still trying to force its way through, using bursts from its drives to deflect incoming masses of rock. It was a display of raw power, but even power had limits. A particularly massive asteroid caught its starboard side, tearing away a section of the outer hull. Atmosphere vented in a silver plume. "Now," Maggie said. The road rage surged forward, threading a narrow gap between two colliding masses, shields flaring as debris scraped them. Darius kept them steady, his face a mask of focus. Big AL's knuckles were white where he gripped the console. Behind them, the cluster folded in on itself, swallowing the mothership in a chaos of stone and gravity. The sensors lit with impacts and collapsing signatures. By the time the cascade settled, only 3 Skroth ships remained, all keeping their distance. Sienna's scanner pinged again, this time with a clear signal. "They're transmitting. The leader says, 'The hunt is over.'" Maggie let the words hang there for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "Good choice." The remaining Skroth ships began to withdraw, their sleek forms disappearing one by one into the deep black. The debris field was all that remained of the confrontation, jagged rock and drifting fragments of alien metal catching the faint light of distant suns. Darius turned from the tactical display. "We just made ourselves a line in their history books." "Not just history," Sienna said softly. "My scan suggests they've tagged us as Apex." Big Al leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "Apex, huh? Guess that's one way to say, don't mess with the crazy ones." Maggie didn't smile, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. "Good. Let them remember." She stood, stretching the stiffness from her shoulders. "Set course for home. We've got stories to tell." As the road rage turned away from the battlefield, Maggie allowed herself a final glance at the collapsing cluster. The Skroth had come expecting prey. They'd leave knowing they'd found something else entirely. And somewhere deep in her bones, she knew this wouldn't be the last time the hunters came calling. Next time, they might bring more teeth. But humans had teeth too, and they'd just shown the galaxy how sharp they could be.